Good afternoon, everybody. It's absolutely wonderful to be here. Pugwash is truly my favorite place in the world, and it has been my part-time home since the early 60s. Yes, it's a long time ago. Today, I'm really honored to be sharing how the Earth Charter's definition of peace overlaps so beautifully with the theme of learning. Learning not just in the classroom, but learning everywhere. And for today's presentation, our focus is going to be this notion of peace as wholeness, and for my presentation, primarily with oneself and other persons, and with the person's culture woven throughout that. So that will be the focus of this first talk. So, TEDx is about ideas and how ideas change everything. What's my idea? Well, first of all, it's a very simple idea, and it's not even my idea. It's a centuries-old idea. And my first exposure to this idea came in the 1990s with the work of Dr. Marie Clay. So, what's the idea? It's just 6 words. From the known to the new. Now, I've mentioned that we're going to be talking about the intersections with learning and the peace movement, and from the known to the new, it seems awfully obvious. Is it even worth talking about? Learning is obviously going from the known to the new. In our minds, in many people's minds, the voyage of learning looks like this. We start with our known on the left, and we go along with our backpacks on our back, ready to learn. Along the way, there is someone or something or some event that provides us that extra boost of where we are going with our learning. We continue along, and we get to the new. And there's that lovely feeling of satisfaction. We get there because we know now that we've gone from our known to our new, and our new is now our known, and we're ready to move on. So simple. If only that were true. As we all know, I'm sure everybody in this room has in some way struggled to learn something at some time. But some people, we also know, struggle regularly. They struggle so much that it becomes to define who they are. They see themselves through the eyes of, I can't. So we can see in this image here, the backpack is simply not a part of the learning. The learner is sitting on it, wondering, pausing. You can create your own story about this rugged path ahead. And today I'm going to share with you 2 stories, part of my own career in teaching. And again, while my examples will be coming from my life as a teacher, what I will be saying will apply to all walks of life and any learning that we do, like today. So first, the first person you're going to meet is a young student named Hazel. And Hazel was in grade 3. And Hazel grew up in a culture of storytelling. Her family's always told stories. She learned to love these stories. She learned to tell these stories. She was known as an excellent storyteller. And it became a part of her life. Her known was her storytelling. When she got to school, of course, she was learning how to write stories. And that's when it changed for Hazel. She quickly realized that while she could tell stories, she couldn't write stories. And she started to believe that she was someone who could only tell stories and not write them. It became a part of how she saw herself. And her teachers in grade 3, and I will just pause to mention those teachers in grade 3, they're rock stars, they truly are. Teachers in grade 3 have a lot of students in front of them with a wide range of ability. That grade 3 year is really quite something. And the teachers noticed that Hazel was having difficulty with her writing. They also noticed that it was affecting Hazel's thoughts about herself, her self-concept about who she was as a learner, and they were concerned. So a group of colleagues of mine, one of those colleagues is delightfully in this room. It's just so nice to know. A group of my colleagues got together and they were determined to find Hazel's known. So they had a sample of her writing, and let's have a look at that sample of the writing that my colleagues were faced with. So clearly, it's understandable why the teachers were concerned, why Hazel continued to believe that she wasn't a story writer. You can see very easily some of those concerns. But my colleagues were determined, and they took, I think they told me it was like 35, 45 minutes to figure this out. And they did figure it out. Now I'm going to read this story to you 2 times. The first time, I'm going to read it to you word by word, so that as I am reading it, you can look through this story and find Hazel's known. So as I read it, look carefully, and you will find a lot of what Hazel's known. So, first reading. When I made the perfect catch, it came over my shoulder, and I dived and caught it, and I got the touchdown. Now, that was a word-by-word reading. You can see her known. She's got some spellings correct. She's got some spellings almost correct. But now listen as we listen to as I read you Hazel's story. When I made the perfect catch, it came over my shoulder and I dived and caught it, and I got the touchdown. Hazel is a story writer and a storyteller. She's not a story, but she is not a non-writer. She is a writer with potential. Now, the fascinating thing about all of this was when my colleagues discovered this, there was true excitement in the room. Once we saw what Hazel's writing translated into, we couldn't unsee it. It was a very exciting moment. And then the next step was to share Hazel's writing with the teachers and with Hazel. And Hazel was invited to talk about what she could do as a writer, and Hazel's perspective about herself changed. She could see what she was able to do, and she herself started to know what she needed to know next, what her new was going to be. When the teachers looked at it, the same thing happened to the teachers. It was a sigh of relief. They could see how to enable Hazel to take her next steps comfortably and regain her sense of self, that sense of wholeness, that relationship with yourself. So it was really actually a very exciting time for groups of people, but most importantly, the difference it made to Hazel's life, thanks to the colleagues who took the time to figure that out. Now, I will say that, again, took my colleagues a fair amount of time. Just one of these other ideas that's floating around like right now as sort of a new idea, you may have heard about it, AI. I've tried a while ago, I asked AI, I said, this student was asked to write a story about a special day. Can you figure it out? And within that much time, AI did. So, for teachers, what a wonderful tool to help them get to some of our students known in the future. And I'm saying that with all cautions about AI as well. But it was a wonderful way of thinking about how we can make a teacher's life more focused on the students, having the time for the students. So that's Hazel. Let's move on now to Thomas. Thomas was in grade 12. He was an 18-year-old who could not wait to finish school. And when I met Thomas, he came into the room very, very hesitant, did not want to be there. He sat in a chair and he slumped. I had not seen Thomas's face because he was so bent over, and his first words were, "This is a total waste of time. I can't read. Why am I here? I've had all the tests. I can't read." And sensing his frustration, I knew that we should not start off with reading. So I suggested that we talk. And I knew in advance that Thomas's hero was Kirk Johnson, a very famous Nova Scotia boxer. And I said, let's talk about Kirk Johnson. And when I mentioned the name Kirk Johnson, something in Thomas changed. Actually, it felt like the air in the room changed. It wasn't that he sat up. There was just something in his shoulder area that just moved a little bit, because he knew about Kirk Johnson. So we talked about Kirk Johnson for a while, and Thomas's knowledge was deep, and it was perceptive, and he had a real lens on Kirk Johnson's life. Truly, truly a hero. After we chatted about Kirk Johnson, I said to Thomas, I've written 5 paragraphs about Kirk Johnson, each about a different time in his life, each written at a different level of difficulty. And I'm inviting you to choose one of those paragraphs and see how you feel about reading it. So as soon as I said those words, Thomas's hackles went up, because we'd had a great time talking, but now I had asked him to start reading, and that didn't seem on. That was not in what he had wanted to do. So he very reluctantly grabbed at a paragraph and started reading it. And it was very, very difficult for Thomas. Every word was a struggle. And barely made it to the end of the first sentence, and he just looked and said, I told you I can't read. Why am I here? And I was honest with Thomas. I said, that was too hard. No question that was too hard. But I firmly believe, Thomas, that we are going to find something that you can read. Please look at those paragraphs and choose one that you think may invite you more into the reading. So very reluctantly, he chose a second paragraph. And with that paragraph, he clearly was making more progress. You could see that some of the words were familiar, sort of word by word reading, very cautious. But as he read through 2 or 3 sentences, he stopped. And I said, Thomas, you were getting, that wasn't too bad, but I want you to hear yourself as a reader. Please have a look again and try to choose a paragraph, or try to look and see if you see a paragraph that looks more comfortable for you. So then it happened. He picked up a paragraph and he started to read it, and he read it. He really read it. He wasn't just getting the words correct. He was reading it as a paragraph should be written, with that fluency, with that sense of the words that are going to come next. It was meaningful to him. It was meaningful to me as the listener. And at that moment, Thomas's posture did change. I still couldn't see his whole face, but what I could see was the corners of his mouth. And that smile that we do all of us sometimes when you don't really want to smile, but you can't help but start to smile. You're either too proud to let on, or you're too nervous because you think, if I smile, what if that smile goes away? What if it's taken away from me? So Thomas was trying so hard not to smile. But I saw it, and again, the posture, the feeling in the room changed. You could feel that transition from I can't to maybe I can. So I said to Thomas, so you read that, and you read that well. And he paused and said, yeah, but it was about Kirk Johnson. And it was way easier than what I have to read in grade 12. And he was right. It was a lot easier than grade 12 reading. But I said, after he said that, I said, exactly, Thomas, exactly. When we're learning to read, we learn to read what we're interested in. The more interested we are in what we are reading, the better readers we become. And again, teachers know this. Teachers have these libraries full of books that are available and interesting to children. So at that point, Thomas said, okay, it's still easy. And I said, yes, it is easy. But now that you've heard yourself read, you know now that it's time to move from what you know to what the next steps are in your learning. And at that point, he then lifted his head and looked up at me and said, when can we start? And I said, right now. And then, and this was the really lovely part, paragraph still in his hand, he held it up and he said, can I keep this? And I said, absolutely, you can keep that. So that moment, actually it was a pivotal moment in my career to see that transition in a student who had probably not heard himself read since perhaps in the early primary years. It was an amazing transition, not only to experience, but to watch Thomas's persona changed from that deep feeling of I can't to I can. Time to move forward. So what are the connections between Hazel's journey and Thomas's journey? The same sort of journey, stepping stones, still ragged. I'm not saying Thomas's journey was an easy one, so still can be craggy along the way. But throughout this, I mentioned the book bag at the beginning of this talk, and I'm going to mention it again. Because this is the key part of both stories, Hazel's and Thomas's. It's the book bag. We often think of a book bag as holding the pencils, the pens, the workbooks, what we need for what we view as learning. But the book bag holds so much more. The book bag, in Hazel's and Thomas's case, and really, if we think about it, for all of us, the book bag is a receptacle, a metaphorical receptacle for who we are as people, our interests, our expectations, our cultural knowledges, our language, all of those things that have become a part of us. If we are going to make this journey from the known to the new, this book bag has to always take who we are into account and continue to acknowledge who we are as we move forward. This metaphorical book bag is truly the key to going from the known to the new, who the student is as a person. So, summing up, from the known to the new lives on the sports field, in the kitchen, in the laboratory, in the garden, wherever we are learning something new. Because when we start from the known, we don't just build skills. We build confidence, identity, possibility, better relationships with ourselves, with others, and with the world. And what better place to celebrate this idea, this TEDx idea of from the known to the new, than right here in Pugwash, Nova Scotia, home to the remarkable center of the international peace movement. Thank you very much.